Oh,
Yo.
hi, John.
Hello.
We're broadcasting on our friends at,
It's on, if their channel is open, we broadcast.
Yep. So we have no Doug today and we have no Jennifer.
For the entire meeting.
Correct. Jennifer has a birthday for one of her kids. And Doug just said he couldn't make. What's that?
Gotta have four to pass.
Gotta have 4 to pass.
Man,
All right, so budget.
Nikki?
Okay, we're ready to get started.
Yes, we are, please.
All right, I'm going to start on page 4 of the packet. The FY22 General Fund Preliminary Assumptions for Revenue. Overall revenue before fund balance appropriation is projected at 12.6 million, an increase of approximately 1.7% from the original F21 budget. Based on pre-BOE information, the property tax base is projected to increase about 3.7% from FY21. However, it still is subject to change following BOE in May. The FY20 tax base was approximately 330 million. The FY21 tax base, 353 million, and the FY22 tax base is projected at 366 million. We're assuming a mill rate of 13 mills, where 1 mill is approximately 366,166. Sales tax collections are projected at an increase of approximately 2.7%. Hotel and motel tax collection is projected to decrease about 3.7% from the original FY21 budget, and landfill is projected flat.
Nikki, excuse me just a second here. For Bryant, I think is the question on the property tax base was there an adjustment, escalator or whatever, or is this all new value?
This is new value. Offhand, I don't know exactly if there was exactly how the assessors tweaked it this year. It was the first year using the Mars assessment software, but I'm happy to ask those questions.
Yeah. It just would, I guess if we were changing what our base was built on, it would be nice to know that.
well, John, if we kept it at what last year's assessed value, it would result in, I think, about what, a 0.5, a 0.5% reduction in sales tax, Nikki? I mean, not sales tax, property tax mill rate.
Yep.
I guess I don't understand when you say, are you talking about the,
Well, I mean, we had a base value last year, and then sometimes we're not increasing the mill rate, but we're changing the base
okay.
by some factor. And I guess I just was wondering, if there was a factor applied or if it was just new construction.
New constructions, permits, and any red flags that came up for the assessors. It was not a full reevaluation year like the previous year.
And we as a city don't apply that factor either, right? Like we don't apply a factor each year or every 2 years.
I guess I don't know what.
It does change.
I know, but it changes by the assessor coming up and doing that. A third-party assessor, not us as a city applying a factor.
Right.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
Because some people feel that we have the ability to do that.
Right.
We don't do that.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, any other questions at this point, or? Nikki, if you continue, please.
Okay, so moving to page 5. State municipal assistance of $92,508 is projected at an increase of about $16,000. Recreation revenue is projected to increase based on comparisons between the F21 amended budget and F22 draft. However, revenue is still down from where we were pre-COVID. F19 actuals were about $272,000, and then F20 actuals dropped to $194,000. Our F21 original budget was around $244,000, but we amended down to $81,100, and we're projecting for F22 $144,750. Also projected to decrease. We had budgeted $80,001 with rates between 0.05% and 2.8%. F22 is looking like $8,250 with the majority of rates between 0.05% and 0.15%. We do have 2 investments maturing that are higher. One for general fund at 2.05% and one for the landfill at 0.85%. The new GCI lease is projected at about $10,000, an increase of $4,490. And we're projecting a transfer of $200,000 from the landfill fund to assist in a heavy equipment lease for a purchase of a dozer at approximately $500,000. And then we have a transfer of $65,000 from self-insurance in the equipment replacement fund for an EMS hose truck. This is the same hose truck that we have budgeted in F21. They're still looking for this replacement vehicle. And then projected operating revenue and fund balance appropriation is about $13.3 million. We had 13.6 in the F21 original budget, showing a decrease of $212,347. Are there any questions about the revenue assumptions? Okay, so page 6.
Okay.
On the expenditures, overall expenditure is projected at about $13.3 million, a decrease of approximately 1.5% from the F21 original budget. The contribution to Nome Public Schools is projected at $3 million. This is the request from Nome Public Schools. The mandatory contribution is about $1.1 million, and the additional contribution, $1.8 million. The contribution to the Nome Preschool Association is projected at $65,000. And we are projecting snow removal flat at $90,000 between what happened in F20 and F21. Utilities are projected similar to F21. We're waiting to see if there'll be an increase in fuel. And then for staff changes in the city clerk's department, One accounting tech was split 50-50 with finance, which is now 100% city clerk. This change was made in the F21 amended budget for discussion with the auditors regarding the cash receipting process and aligns the job duties with Ordinance 17.10. In the finance department, we'd like to make the technician position to an assistant finance director. In police, we're changing one investigator to a police officer 2. We're adding one accreditation manager to start January 1, 2022. We're adding 2 full-time and 1 part-time dispatchers. And we're turning 1 full-time CSO into 2 part-time CSOs. In public works, we have 1 laborer changed to custodian. And in the recreation center, we're removing the 4-month part-time laborer. Right now, in transfers to other funds, it's approximately $362,338, and that breaks down to the debt service for $206,737 for the principal and interest payments on the school bonds. In the capital projects fund transfer, it's approximately $155,601 for the purchase of the 2021 Ford Expedition and a 2021 Defender side-by-side. And this is approximately $90,601. And the emergency services hose truck for $65,000. This all results in a projected net operating deficit of $726,829. And this will be covered by appropriating from the fund balance savings in order to balance the budget. The fund balance appropriation from the landfill for $200,000 for the equipment will require council action. The fund balance appropriation for the equipment vehicle fund for the hose truck for $65,000 and a general fund balance appropriation for $461,829. Are there any questions about those expenses? On page 8, the facility building maintenance estimates, we still have the hockey rink going on, and the fund balance available through NSEDC CBS is $81,457. And the major vehicle replacement equipment purchases are from IT, 148 port switch for $20,000. For police, 148 port switch for $20,000. Again, for the police, the patrol vehicle and side-by-side we already talked about. Emergency services, the hose truck for $65,000. In the rec center, 1 piece of cardio equipment for $10,000. And then in public works road maintenance, we're proposing a 5-year lease program on heavy equipment. We're estimating $150,000 debt payment over 5 years for a dozer, loader, and dump truck. And at the end of the lease, the city would own the equipment. Then moving to page 10, this is an overview of the general fund revenue budget. We're giving F19 actuals, F20 actuals, FY21 year-to-date actuals through April 20th, the FY21 approved budget, and the FY21 amended budget so that you can see some comparisons to what we're projecting for the F22 proposed budget. And then total revenue before transfers for F22 is about 12.6 million, and then total revenue after transfers is about 13.3 million. And on page 11, this is set up the same way with the F19 actuals, F20 actuals, and F21 year-to-date actuals, the F21 approved budget, and the amended budget, so that, again, you can have comparisons. We don't normally provide both budgets, but since we had so much come out of the F21 approved budget for CARES, I thought it might be a good comparison to have them both. Total expense before transfers is about 13 million, and total expense after transfers about 13.3 million. And then I'm just going to run through some highlights from each section on page 12. I'll start with revenue. 4.7 million for property tax at 13 mills, 5.6 million it's for sales tax, 130,000 for bed tax, and permits, licenses, and fees, 30,000 for vehicle licenses, 320,000 for landfill fees, 55,000 for building and remodeling permits. In shared revenue and municipal assistance, 92,508 for state shared revenue, and approximately 10,000 for revenue sharing from liquor licenses. And you won't see any revenue from the fish tax as that has been reallocated to the port. In payment in lieu of taxes, 510,000 for the pilot for unorganized areas and 250,000 for the NJUS pilot. In public safety special services, 200,000, which is estimated net ambulance fees. On page 13, recreation and pool, 144,750 for the rec center, 28,750 for the pool. In culture, 4,000 for museum admissions, and another 4,000 for museum concessions, which is the gift store. In fines and forfeitures, 5,500 in fines. In investment and interest earnings, 8,250 for our CD investments and AMLIP money market funds. In bill equipment and land lease rentals, we're projecting 10,000 for Old St. Joe's, 10,000 for the mini convention center, and then I have a typo, it should be 10,000 for the Nome cable vision lease. And then 150,000 for the Katerpit Cultural Center lease, as well as some rent for 27,600 from the police department. In donations and contributions, we have 10,000 from Norton Sound Hospital for the MOA in place for vehicle maintenance, and 20,000 also from Norton Sound for the EMS volunteer stipend. And that's revenue highlights. Are there any questions? The general proposed for expense.
You're breaking up a little, Nikki.
Oh, is this any better?
Yes.
Getting a message connection's unstable. Okay, Lynn legislative, 21,750 for the state lobbyist, 5,000 for travel and per diem for the mayor for conferences, Washington, D.C. and the Iditarod Star, 4,500 travel and per diem for the city council for newly elected officials training and the AML fall conference, 20,000 for council donations, contributions, and facility fee waivers. And then we've made a change and moved the legislative vehicle 316 to the administration budget. So there are no expenses proposed for vehicle maintenance or insurance and legislative. In administration, finance, and IT, we have 30,000 in audit fees, 13,500 in copy fees and operating supplies, 6,000 for the city apartment rental, which is a shared cost with the port and police department, 17,000 for the equipment and maintenance agreements for Cassell, Cannon, and Pitney Bowes, and 30,000 is an estimate for a salary study, 4,000 travel and per diem for the city manager for conferences, and 4,000 for travel and per diem for finance for conferences, 165,000 for IT managed services support and project work, 35,000 for SmartNet renewal, Unicode website hosting, server support, and Veeam backup, 9,000 for spring and fall cleanup activities, and 35,000 for a 48 port switch, batteries, and inventory needs. On page 15, for the city clerk, 45,000, which breaks down for appraisal assessment contract at 22,000 and the digital appraisal software at 20,000. We have 9,000 for election expenses, 4,500 for travel and training, and 45,000 for code codification, Yukon title, mapping hosting service, Duncan GIS, Excel, and Canon support. In planning and engineering, 40,000 for the city engineer, and 32,250 for the city planner, Canon, and the right-of-way survey. In the Department of Public Safety Police, 35,000 for workstation replacements, crime and software updates, cameras and storage maintenance, and a 48-port switch. 80,000 for ongoing training needs, 25,000 for firearms and ammunition, 12,000 for police recruitment, 28,000 for fuel costs for vehicles, and 60,000 for vehicle maintenance and parts, and 15,000 for the TASER contract. On page 16, Department of Public Safety Animal Control, 25,000, which breaks down into 22,000 for the animal control contractor and 3,000 for the annual pet vaccinations, 5,000 for operating supplies. For the Department of Public Safety Emergency Services, 70,000 in volunteer incentives, 25,000 for EMS and fire training, 15,000 for uniform gear and protection gear, 15,000 for PPE and miscellaneous medical supplies, 22,000 for an allowance for uncollectible ambulance fees, and 48,000 for Scott Air Packs. In the Department of Public Works building maintenance, 3,000 for travel and training, 10,000 for the fleet fuel and oil, 12,000 for the maintenance and the fleet, 5,000 for an analyzer for boiler maintenance and building expenses, 11,000 for material and janitorial supplies for all buildings, and 6,000 for carpet at the Mini. On page 17, for the Department of Public Works, for the building itself, we have 6,000 for I think it's a heating modine. I know I always mess that word up. And 10,000 for an air compressor. Department of Public Works Senior Citizens Building, 6,500 for inspections for refrigeration, fire alarm, fire sprinkler, and elevator maintenance. In the Department of Public Works for the landfill, 60,000 in engineering costs, 20,000 for projected surveyor services costs, and 20,000 for a portable litter fence. In the Department of Public Works for the cemetery, 2,000 for a utility trailer. In the Department of Public Works and Grounds, 10,000 for a fence repair. In the Department of Public Works road maintenance, we have 200,000 for road maintenance materials, 90,000 for snow removal, 100,000 for the fuel for the fleet, 135 for fleet maintenance and parts. And on page 18, still with the Public Works roads, 250,000 for that estimated lease payment. For the Department of Parks and Rec, 10,000 for referee services, 6,000 for attending annual conferences, 7,000 for bowling parts, sports supplies, food services, and trophies, $1,250 for youth program supplies, 3,000 in facility fee waivers, 2,000 in annual inspections for the fire alarms and fire suppression systems, 23,000 for LED lights and general maintenance, 10,000 for replacement of cardio equipment. This year, we're looking at getting a treadmill. And 4,000 for the certification and training for lifeguards and pool staff. In the Carrie M. McLean Memorial Museum, 4,000 for travel and training for conferences and professional meetings, 17,500 for the COVID-19 publications for photography, layout, design, copy editing, and printing. $28,000 for the COVID-19 exhibit design and fabrication, as well as some costs for traveling exhibits. And $2,000 for inventory archive materials. On page 19 for the Kagoya Kazka Library, $2,000 for travel and training for education conferences, $13,000 for subscriptions, books, and magazines, $11,500 for youth and adult programming supplies. For the Visitor Center, $200,000 for the Chamber of Commerce contractual agreement. And for non-departmental, $3 million for the contribution to Nome Public Schools, $5,000 for an allowance for unemployment, $5,000 for an allowance for uncollectible property tax payments, $206,736 for school debt payments, $65,000 for the Nome Preschool Association, and $30,000 for Nest. And again, the $155,601 transfer for the police expedition and side-by-side and the EMS hose truck. And then we are guesstimating a $650,000 credit as a placeholder for labor and benefit transfers to grants. We have the MOA with Health and Human Services for $171,000. We have an estimate of using $40,000 in E911 for dispatcher calls. We have approximately $200,000 left in CARES, and we are still waiting for the ARPA Treasury guidance for those funds. Are there any questions at this point?
Nikki, we have a couple people in the room today that came up from the Iditarod, and there is a number in our non-departmental that had been included by Glenn at $25,000. We did receive a letter that is in the packet tonight from Iditarod requesting more than that. And Chaz St. George is here, and Mark Nordman. I'd like to give them just a little opportunity here to address that request.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Like the mayor said, my name is Chad St. George. I'm with the Iditarod Trail Committee. Mark Nordman, who you might have seen once or twice walking down Front Street. He is our race marshal and race director. And what we're here today to do is propose to you a difference between what's happened over the last 2 years and what we envision happening over the next 2 years. I'd like to start with economic impact for Nome, Alaska, and if we could go to the next slide. This was 2020, and it was in Willow. And as you can see, we have this. It's on Willow Lake, and you can. It's kind of fades out, but it goes. But the humanity goes all the way across the lake, and you can see that there was a lot of snow that day as well. If we could go to the next slide, please, Brian. This is Nome about 9 days later. In Nome, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We were provided guidance from both the city manager and the mayor at the time about what could be, what was going to happen, and of course, your constituency, the people in your community, got together and began the process of figuring out what was going to happen next. During this whole time, I'd just like to make it clear that we worked very closely with Dr. Ann Zink and Carol Fink, both of them with DHSS, in order for us to get to Nome. And so we really appreciate Nome's flexibility in that process, and we really do appreciate the opportunity to finish in Nome in 2020. It was an iffy situation, to be honest. If we could fast forward to the next slide. This was the finish line in Willow. this year, which was kind of different. As you can see, there's not a lot of people there. We had worked under a number of constraints through DHSS and CDC to ensure not just our compliance, but our own processes of maintaining a COVID-free race. And so, so there weren't a lot of people there. I want to thank the mayor of Nome for being there, along with the mayor of Wasilla, the Matanuska-Susitna Borough. They were there to see the first musher arrive. And then if we could go to the next one, please. So you may know some of these characters. These are your mushers. Joe Garney, and he's actually with Mark at that time. That was taken at the musher drawing banquet. A very happy Aaron Burmeister, who ended up this year in second place. And I think he said earlier today that it was just his preparation for coming in first place for our 50th anniversary here in Nome. So he's ready to go again. And of course, Nils Hahn, who has run this race on a number of occasions. I'd like to go to the next slide, if at all possible, and talk about economic impact in Nome. The not being here this last year impacted us economically. It impacted us economically the year before. You had the same issues here in Nome. Our proposal is to work together with the city of Nome and especially in a number of areas. One of them is economic impact. These are just examples of logos of the impact that each one of these entities felt during 2020 and 2021. And then if you don't mind, Brian, going to the next slide, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the funds that we requested and where they will go to in terms of marketing. Nome Gateway to Arctic Tourism. I spent some time today with Drew. I know that Drew's new here, but people already in Anchorage, including Thompson and Company, who are the PR firm for the ATIA, say he's a great guy, and I really enjoyed talking to him today. And couldn't be here today because he's got to dress out about 5 caribou, so he's working really hard on that. Nome is the gateway to Arctic tourism, and we believe that we have a number of platforms to help drive that message. Part of what we intend to do is work on ways through our social media platform and through our newly designed CRM that can reach out and filter a number of different race fans, donors, people who have always wanted to come to Alaska, have always wanted to see what Nome looks like, and reach out to them individually through our CRM.
What be the CRM, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a customer relations monitoring system that actually, it's a management system that takes all your data and then filters it to meet, like, for you, Mayor, I can show that you're a board member of the Iditarod, you're former mayor of Nome, your present mayor of Nome, your donations, and also your volunteerism. And then we can aggregate that, and we can look at it, and we can say this would be a prime candidate to come visit Nome. And so these are the types of things we can do in concert with the Nome CVB. What I'm talking about is working together, collaborating together, and growing the awareness of what Nome has to offer. The 50th anniversary of the Iditarod came to my attention from a gentleman named Howard Farley, who you may all know, who reminded me on Saturday that when the first race started, Nome had the Nome representatives that served on the board of directors actually had oversight over all the communities from Nome south to McGrath. So that was their territory. And so there's a lot for us to learn there in terms of what what Nome's part has been and will continue to be in the future. The Iditarod 50th anniversary includes a number of different activities, and I'm here to offer to you an opportunity to be a part of the process, whether it's on a committee, on the 50th anniversary committee, or some other committee that is associated with the Nome finish, so that we get a much greater, much broader diversity on the committees. So please keep that in mind, because we would love to see more input from Nome itself. The 50th anniversary, this year I was telling folks earlier today, we intended to have one basically our Nome, or not our Nome, but our Iditarod musher drawing banquet in Anchorage. Then we have a big auction, live auction. And so this year we had a virtual auction. We had one place for people to come to Nome, and the package was around $25,000 to come to Nome, see it, enjoy it, be a part of it. They're called our super fans. This year we had 5 bidders that were almost exactly the same. So this year we're going to be inviting five bidders, their spouses or friends, all up here to Nome to be a part of this year's race. And it just shows you the synergy that people have right now to get out to see this race in a very, very, very upfront and personal way. We also are very committed to small business reinvestment. All of these different businesses here, out at the airport, further up the road and further down the road, they all have been impacted. It's our job and our commitment to take the funding that might be available to us and reinvest that in the businesses that are here. So that's why that is the way it is. And of course, transformational healthy community awareness. This is a big one for the city of Nome. You've led the rest of the state right now in terms of COVID mitigation. And I think that trend will continue. I also believe that there's a great opportunity for us to help tell your story to your own community and all the communities on the trail, and within our education program that we have with Insider in the schools in Alaska, where we'll get that word out and continue to tell that story. So these are the 4 areas that I'm talking about focusing energy on. These 4 areas are in no particular order. They all need to be worked on right away. We feel that that's why we're here now. Usually you see us around October, maybe November. We're here now because we understand and value and appreciate everything you've done for us. And so it's time for us to be a part of what you're trying to get accomplished here in Nome in a number of different ways, including tourism, your business rebuild, and of course, your transformational healthy communities. I think that's it in a nutshell. And I only had 5 minutes, so I think I'm right about there. So I want to thank you both.
We are going to get a clock here soon, like they have.
I figured that, yeah. My own little timer up here. But if there are any questions at all, please, I'd love to hear from you. I'll get around my information. You should have it in the email I sent out as well. I don't know if that was dispersed or not, but please let me know if there's anything I can do to answer your questions. Okay?
Thank you. Yes, it was dispersed. It's a published communication in the
Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Please.
Chaz, when do you would look for a decision from the council? And what would be a time frame that would, work for you and hopefully work for the city?
I think that's a really good question, and I believe that that the council has to do is due deliberation. You've got your due diligence that you have to perform. You're looking at a budget, which I just saw that, and so we would hope that sooner the better. But we also know that you have a number of things looking right at you right now. And like I believe we're all on the same year end fiscal year of June 30. So somewhere between now and maybe that. So thank you very much. Okay. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Roland, did you want to say anything?
Nope.
Okay. Give an opportunity to the folks that are here for less formal in a work session. All right, thank you for that, Chaz, and the explanation. Council will be working on renditions of this budget, I believe, for the next few weeks. And Nikki, are you ready to continue?
So on page 20 for city reserves, in the restricted category at June 30, 2021, our debt service will be about $1,125,000. In constrained to specific purpose by the council, we have our self-insurance equipment replacement fund. The balance is about $1,059,000, and we have $250,000 waiting for reinvestment for a total of about $1.3 million. This fund is established as a split fund, $500,000 designated for building self-insurance and $500,000 designated for equipment or vehicle replacement or any major computer purchase over $25,000. City buildings are insured at $100,000 deductible per building. And if the balance of these funds drops below $1 million, there's supposed to be an annual appropriation of up to $100,000 until it comes back up to the full $1 million. In the assigned category for a specific purpose, we have the PERS reserve. The balance is $970,106 with $248,000 waiting for reinvestment, so about $1.2 million. We have the Milky Estate Fund. The balance is $332,755, and these are all at March 31, 2021, the balances. And we have the landfill fund balance at $3.3 million with about $500,000 waiting for reinvestment, and this is about $3.8 million total. And these funds were established for closure costs set aside. And then unassigned, the beginning unassigned balance at F21 was about $8.7 million. And then part of that, which isn't listed here, is we have about $1.8 million in our general fund reserve CDs. Are there any questions?
Nikki, would you explain to the council the challenges that we now face with the low interest rates and what that means and what we need to maintain in our checking account so we can avoid fees?
So our checking account is sort of in an umbrella with the school bond fund checking, the port operating checking, and the port causeway checking. And in order to avoid fees in March, our balances had to be above 9.2 million, which we were above 9.2 million in March with all of those combined. But as we spend down in F21 and the checking balance drops, we could hit a point where we're going to have to start paying fees, depending on how we shake out at the end of the fiscal year. We get 0.25% earnings on our checking account, and that's what offsets those fees, keeping it at the 9.2 million.
And that, just so for the council, that is higher than we would get on a CD right now, which is 0.1/10%. And another thing, You do have $8.7 million in liquidity in that it is not assigned to anything. So you also, your landfill closure budget is more than funded. There is a surplus in there. It was estimated about $2.4 to $2.5 million. Just so you know how your self-insurance fund has grown. Nikki, how have we added money to the self-insurance fund if it wasn't also through the increases through the interest rates?
So I recently learned that we made an additional deposit based on a health insurance holiday, which was around $150,000. So the increases there are the health insurance holiday and the interest.
So, and this fund is set up, half of it is set up that, God forbid, we had 5 structures go down in 1 year. We would have enough insurance to at least cover the deductible. The city's not been using the vehicle replacement fund. Typically, what's happened is that we budgeted for it, and whatever the surplus was paid for it. So you have not used that for a while. And what I'm asking the council to take a look at, and this is something that has never been done in this community, but you can purchase heavy equipment. Usually it's at an extraordinarily low interest rate of like 2% over 5 years to buy heavy equipment. In some communities, they buy heavy equipment through bonding because it typically lasts for 20 years or longer. So what I'm asking you all to look at as part of the budget this year is going out and purchasing some of that equipment, but pay for it over a 5-year period. We would go out and seek the best interest rate that we could get in the marketplace through an RFP, and then come back and look at purchasing of that equipment. So, and then on top of that, the fire department is still looking at a used vehicle. They're having a tough time finding one, and that could go up for a hose truck. And I guess the last issue, and I got to go back, I've got a note on one of these. This does not include anything to improve or make improvements at the swimming pool, because we know there's some work that needs to be done in the next year. You could also take some of your proposed expenses in next year and pay through it through the current CARES funding that is available, that we still have left, which is about $240,000. And so I just wanted to give you some options. We're spending a lot of money on ammunition this year because the police department over the past 2 years has spent down all their ammunition for going out to the practice range, and ammunition has also gone up in price. So those are some of the highlights that I wanted you to consider, because I do believe we have another budget hearing scheduled for Thursday at 5:30.
Yeah. Let's put it on the calendar.
Nikki, could you, for the next time we get together, just give us a little blurb on the debt service that's outstanding, what that 1.125 million is for and when it matures?
Sure.
I guess, just thinking about these big numbers in the rec center and City Hall and some of these other deferred maintenance things that we have, interest rates right now seem to be low, and we're not making any interest really, but it might be that the municipal bond bank has some kind of a bond package, or we should find out from them and potentially consider some bonding for a couple of these big projects, possibly.
Well, one of the things that's not in this budget, Mr. Mayor, is something I was going to ask the council is to take some of the unassigned fund balance that we had a surplus. Nikki, what was the surplus from last year? Because I can't pull the number off my head. I keep thinking it's 400,000.
Yeah, I believe it's close to that.
And use the fund surplus, which essentially came from CARES, and use that with the NSEDC funds, and that should come close to paying for it. I think things are going to cost a lot of money because of the construction industry is revved up right now, plus the cost of materials is revved up.
Yeah, I mean, material, Ken, what you were mentioning to me the other day, the increase that on materials this year compared to when we bought for this Barron Street project, I think it was.
So a couple different ones. Transformers in general, just on the recurring electrical order that we do every year for replacement transformers for stockpile. That's up a full 33% over the last order, and the lead time is at least 2 months longer. We did an order earlier this month after it took us a full month to get quotes, and we only could get quotes from one firm instead of two, and we might make the last barge. It's that rough. And then on Bering Street, also about 33%. Availability wasn't as bad.
And the intent is that Zeppela is next year, or is it
Next
2 years?
year's Port, and then Sepulveda will be in 23.
Anybody else interested in any bonding or some information on bonding?
Bonding for new stuff or bonding for what? Was that what you're saying?
Yeah, bonding for new stuff.
I do have some questions about the new stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. For the dozer and other equipment they're listed on, would it be possible to, I understand that some organizations in town lease the equipment on a standby basis and only pay for the equipment when used. Is it, and we have at least three, if not more, maybe four fairly good sized companies that have quite a bit of equipment in town. Would you do an analysis on what it would cost to lease these pieces of equipment or have them available for a lease as opposed to the outright purchase of them?
We can, look into that when Mr. Horton comes in. One of the things that has not been done is, and we are going to do this, is have, like you would in a tractor trailer driver's log, we want to know when the piece of equipment is being used, where it's being used, because some of this is landfill, some of this is port, and we do, just so you know, we do lease a lot of equipment, and because the numbers that we are going to see this year for moving snow are going to, we put 90,000, we're hoping for a mild winter. We've had a harsh, mild, harsh, and we're hoping mild next year because we spent, at least with one company that I find my numbers are right, close to $50,000. And it also is when we can get access to the equipment.
Well, in the case where you have the equipment on lease on standby, basically, then that question goes away. It's set up. And that's why I understand from some other companies that that's what they're doing. So I would just like to look into that possibility as opposed to investing $1 million into three pieces of equipment.
I just want to clarify, we get these, we don't set this equipment aside. We contract wet or dry and then we go to them, and when we need help, one company does not want to provide any equipment to us unless it's wet. And for everybody, that means it's a driver and the piece of equipment. Dry means just the piece of equipment. And that's been the challenge. We just haven't been able to also get the equipment. And when we had snow removal up at the landfill, we didn't even have a dozer big enough to move it. Not landfill, snow dump.
So are these additions to the fleet or replacements?
A couple would be replacements to the fleet. It's just time.
Are they new
Yes.
pieces of equipment?
It
Brand
would
new?
be brand-new pieces of equipment that would last the city at least 20 years. If they're properly, if you take care of it, it'll last you longer than that. But these are heavy pieces of equipment that should last 20 years.
Next note I had on there, on my little note sheet, was that something that I wish the chief was here because he had mentioned the need for the side-by-side, and it kind of sounded pretty justified. But one thing he mentioned was the ability to take the side-by-side over the rocks when they're down there searching on the beach. And I talked to a few officers, and my understanding that, and most of the time during summertime around here, you can get probably most things within the city limits with a vehicle or a four-wheel drive vehicle. But they say that they get stuck when we're having these snowfalls, going out to calls because their cars get stuck. Have they ever thought about having a snow machine as opposed to a side-by-side?
Well, the side-by-side, as it's been discussed with me, is primarily to provide law enforcement down, you guys call it the East Beach. West Beach, which is where we had a person go missing last year. We can't get down there to enforce the law, which means no one's supposed to be camping down there. No one's supposed to be building many structures down there, which they are, because we're going to be posting the beach that no camping is going to be allowed. So it's clearly in place for law enforcement. The other part of the side-by-side is, God forbid, occasionally we have to remove a dead body off the beach.
How far does city limits go on the West Beach?
Well, let's put it this way. It was a pretty long drive the day I was in there sliding around and getting stuck in a four-wheeler, in a 4x4 car, truck.
I think it goes at least to Dredge 6.
It goes way down there.
Dredge 6 is, and down from there, maybe even a little bit further. Ken?
I thought this would be there for EMS support and fire department support, not the police department. There's been a number of occasions where there's been a search and rescue out in ICU where there's nothing vehicles. People rally with their own SUVs. That's what I thought this was.
I'd be actually more supportive of that idea because I think they'd get better use of it than maybe with the patrol, what you're talking about, for the most part, once you get, I know you're talking about that spot where you get to a point where it gets difficult to drive beyond a certain point, but I think for the most part, we can drive pretty far down there.
Not as far, at least the day,
Yeah, I understand it, and Brian's brought up a map that's really helpful.
Whether this is purchased that both parties use it is, I don't really have an objection because I hate pieces of equipment just sitting around. But at the same time, we need to be, when the police need it, they need to get down there. If the fire service, ambulance service, that's fine. But I don't want a territorial war over whose piece of equipment it's going to be.
No, I don't think anybody wants that, but you
You
have to
know,
understand that it's available.
but primarily in this past year, we had a lot of improper, if not illegal, activity happening down on West Beach. And we could not get down there to properly enforce the law. And if we want to avoid future problems, this is why the chief has argued so strongly for getting this piece of equipment.
Gotcha.
Relatively inexpensive compared to some of the other
Yeah, I know.
other items. There was something that, are we in general open, whatever?
Yep.
Okay. Community garden. I'd like to see something in the budget, more than just a placeholder, but I mean, it's basically what it's gonna be. By next summer, summer '22, I'd like to actually see a community garden being developed by the city. So part of that's gonna be during this budget that we're talking about. Hiring a consultant or somebody to help us design it, what kind of stuff should we bring in and mix with the soils and all that kind of stuff to make it relevant. Identifying a location, whether it's down East End Park area or up by the hospital or wherever, what it's gonna look like and all that kind of stuff. So I'd kind of like to put like, I don't know, $10,000-$15,000 into the parks, playgrounds and lights budget. A line item, unless everybody else says absolutely not.
Well, there is a community garden. It's not a
Right,
big,
but
it's not a
pretty
big one.
small, yeah.
Because I know when this subject came up, I heard from people who were involved in that community
Right.
garden.
Right.
And one of the things that we actually have had a conversation with Coeric is the possibility of taking, and I can't think of the name, it just escapes my tongue, taking the food waste and creating a way to create dirt and, so that it could be compost, thank you. Because obviously hauling dirt up here is expensive, or what you would need. So that has been some discussion, but if you want us to look at an area where, because, we're going to have the ability to have water to it, and, how we're going to manage it. Now, right now, if I went out to, to the east side, I got roads that are falling apart right now out there.
Right.
How big of a thing are you thinking, Gerald?
Couple acres. I mean, what I'm thinking is not, a small lot in town where you're growing, 75 tomatoes and whatever. More along the lines of if a citizen of Nome wants a 50 by 50 plot to do their own thing, and I haven't fully thought it out whether they'd need to pay a fee to the city, probably so, but they would have their own plot where they could develop their own garden with certain rules. The city would supply the property and have it cultivated for, so things will actually be able to grow. But then it'd be up to the individual citizens what they wanted to put there.
It's too bad Louis still isn't on the council. He's been a farmer up here in this area for like 50
Yeah.
years. And his
Yeah.
son and Stacy's still farming.
Right.
Doing exactly what you're kind of doing out of town.
Yeah.
But,
Well, it's always, how many degrees warmer on the other side of the mountain?
Right.
It'd be nice
Exactly.
if there was an area out there. It's just more hassle. People can't necessarily get to it, but there seems to be some benefit to that.
Yeah. I mean, if we put $10,000 or $15,000 into it, and the end result is, that it's not feasible, then, I guess we live with that. If the end result is, you can grow these 15 types of vegetables and they'll work just fine and move forward, then we can live with that too.
I guess when you mentioned compost on the thing, I don't know how it works, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out of the crab plant down there. And I
Yeah.
wonder if there's something that could be done with NSCDC.
They've been looking at that for years. and I
Really?
don't think they ever came to a conclusion, but they eventually have a lot of data regarding that.
Don't they fertilize the ocean with it now, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's good, it's good fertilizer for the ocean too, yeah.
I just know there was some, community southeast that was talking about, their fish waste getting hauled.
Yeah.
And I think Phil Prismont ends up hauling some of it, like back up here for some of his gardening or something. Okay, did anybody else have anything they want to add at this point?
I had a couple more questions
Okay, we were just gonna.
Since we only have 4 people.
We were just gonna give everybody a chance, go ahead.
No,
You're next.
No. I mean, if I'll be happy to wait for other people to put in their 2 cents, but I had a question regarding the positions that you put on here. In the police, you're going from 1 investigator to a police officer 2.
Now, we are we do not need right now, and I don't think in the foreseeable future, 2 investigators. The city has been able, when we were here last year at this time, we were looking at 461 cases that had not been reviewed. And the council at that time said, well, we want that extra investigator. We are down to a total of, last week, 22 total active cases between current cases and the 461 cases. Some of those cases are waiting for other police departments to supply us and the district attorney information. We may have a couple people that are cross-trained. One would be a PO2 investigator. We may have a sergeant cross-trained to be an investigator so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we get, the city never finds it in the place in the situation that it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, before I got here.
So what is this accreditation manager, something to do with the CALIA program?
Yes. Actually, and just so the Public Safety Advisory Committee I'm hoping going to be meeting this next month. And they
People filled out their paperwork today. Finally.
And that they will make a decision on what they want to do, and we will need someone to help work ourselves through the process. Whether it's a civilian or a part-time police officer, we're not sure yet.
And then I know during wasn't it this fiscal year, you mentioned about having a assistant city manager, or thinking that you had a long-time staff changing or moving or retiring, and that what's happening with that position
It's in the budget.
for,
You approved it for the amended budget in,
so that's why it's not in this.
Right.
That's why it's not in the
Correct,
differential,
sir.
because we've already gone through that.
Right.
Okay, that's still the plan.
right.
And then that COVID money that Nikki referred to, do we know how much this next pot of money is for the city yet?
We are waiting for formal Treasury guidance. I actually have reached out to them. Right now, it appears the city is going to get a minimum of $803,000. Could be as high as 1.7. I think some of this is going to be tied up with the state also. But because we're not in a county, They said that we should be, eligible for, you're in an unincorporated area. We're not in a borough. We should be eligible for additional funds. But we don't have a direct answer on that right now.
Somewhere between 800,000 and 1.7.
Right.
Without guidance on how to spend.
Well, they're giving us ideas of how it could be spent. I just don't want to turn around and say publicly because then they'll change their minds. And this money, though, is supposed to last us a minimum of 2 years. There won't be the rush that we found ourselves under the CARES funding. Now, I know that late last week a question came up about, what do we do with the seasonal tax? We put the notices out because last year at this time, we didn't get the notices out in time, then people were yelling at us. We got them out, then people said, okay, maybe we shouldn't do it. So that is a question that's in front of you.
I'm happy to make that
Well,
motion tonight.
you will, the tax will be in effect for May. You won't be able to suspend it. You'll be able to suspend it June 1st.
Which will be July 1st.
Is that true? They
July
changed
1st.
it? Huh? July 1st. Oh, that's right. You're right. Excuse me.
The online sales tax consortium.
Right, you're right. Excuse me.
We screwed that up last year.
And do we have to do that by ordinance?
Yes.
So it's a minimum of 2 readings.
Well, by ordinance.
You have to do it by ordinance
For our sales tax holiday.
for a sales tax holiday, and we can't, as what Brian just said,
We did last year.
We did?
yes. Yep. Brian is saying is because we're part of that consortium, we can't do it until July 1st.
Nikki, can you refresh on how much we returned? We didn't pull from savings last year, we put something back,
About 460,000.
which is just coincidentally close to the number for this year's appropriation.
For 2 months, starting July 1st.
Yeah, I guess I was just musing that dipping into the fund balance on this, if we were to zero it out, it would be 1.26 mils plus. I'm certainly not advocating that, but if we saved 460 last year, essentially we paid for it last year and are using it this year. One way to look at it. Zig, you have any questions or thoughts?
No, but I definitely support Gerald's idea. 1,000% on board with the community garden.
From what I understand from the community gardeners, the ones we've had is kind of underutilized, but that may be because it's not laid out in a certain, a different way or promoted to do something different. Other
Yeah,
communities
it's
have what you're
really
talking about too
small.
that are, right, as a way to promote gardening, community gardening.
Food security and all
Yeah,
that.
and our,
Yeah.
most lots don't really have the space to do it.
And part of what the consultant that we would bring in, part of what they would do is go to Norton Sound Health Corp and Quirk, et cetera. I'm thinking especially the hospital because they've got a vested interest in healthy bodies here. And they've provided money in the past for healthy alternative kind of stuff. So I'm thinking they might be willing to pony up some money to help it get started, get it kick-started.
It seems like, I don't know if it still exists under USDA, but they used to have something I think they called the Farm Service Agency or the SCS, what was that?
I don't know, but there is a grant program, because we took advantage of it at Pilgrim Hot Springs to put up the, what do you call them, the tunnels, high tunnels and some other stuff, yeah. So it wasn't a real fun grant to apply, but it did end up providing some cash.
Yes, USDA, it's hard to get the money out of them. They're always wanting to put it out, but the paperwork is. Anyway, SCS is Soil Conservation Service.
Okay.
That was what I was thinking about. So for the budget as proposed, we've had a little bit of an opportunity to go through the detail here. But I guess read through it before Thursday, and any major changes you wish to get in, that would be a good time to start getting them plugged in. And then Nikki, I don't know, did Dana talk to you at all about firewall?
I know she was working on some votes.
Okay. Anyway, there's going to be it looks like there's going to be a need for a 20K replacement in that. So.
Okay.
It seems like there were some things when we allocated the NSEDC money the last time that we actually gave it out to the community, that we were saying we should put, instead of allocating money of NSEDC, we should put it into the regular budget, but I don't remember what those items were. So.
Well, you have a
Everybody
pool
remind
issue.
members.
Pool issue coming up, that, not doing the gutters, is gonna be 300,000. And, Chip's not here to, explain it more detailed, but we're looking at that. I mean, I know the city this year paid off, one, bond, and it freed up $168,000. But we can put together a list, $3 million for the rec center, HVAC, and the locker rooms. That doesn't even include the restaurant. 450, maybe 500,000 here. And that's not dealing with the issues with the ventilation down at the mini, because that is also on the list of upgrades that have been proposed by the city engineer. And I'm sure there are more that, we haven't also highlighted the issues to address at the Stedman Park. We're probably not going to do anything there this year. There are other improvements outside the rec center that would be good. I don't know, where the fire department is in their facility and what their needs are. I mean, and just because we also have money doesn't mean we go out and spend it either. I mean, we've got to be, I have to recommend to you to be good stewards. But like today, yes, it's warm out today. And yes, we do use the windows. We can't get the heat controlled in this building right now. It was like, I came here to get away from the heat. I couldn't even stand it in my office this morning because it was so hot in there. And I know Dave is working on it. We're bringing it outside, but this system really needs to be replaced sooner than later. And I would hope personally that you would look at going into the fund balance to at least get this more on a fast track.
I thought we talked about that with the replacement of the air exchanger and heating. Is the heating's not part of that?
Yeah, but we're gonna ready to go out to do the engineering, but I just want to make sure we have not really, it's not put in this budget. Because when we put these items in the budget, it just blows them up. It's not a fair way of looking at it. Like if we want to put in a $500,000 or $600,000 piece of equipment. Most communities don't go and fund that piece of equipment just out of the general fund. They fund it either through a bond issuance or they fund it through a lease program, which allows the budget to move along more like this than going up and then down. And then, of course, you also have to take in the political, what will the voters pay for a GO bond, government, where we're responsible versus a revenue bond.
Well, I think, Gerald, it's a good idea for us to look at that CDC list because there are a couple of those other programs that are at the whim, depending on what we
Right.
decide to do each year.
Yeah.
And then I would like to see us do something more than what we have in here for the Iditarod. I don't know if we can go all the way to the request, but think about that one.
Regarding the Iditarod request, I think, I don't think anybody debates the importance of Iditarod is to Nome, and how important it is, for a long time, 50 years. But it'd be nice to also have, I know we have some numbers that have been done in the past for economic impact, and also what City of Nome already contributes in kind through building use and public works and other type of things. It'd be nice to have that big part of that picture as well.
I can basically tell you, because we've been looking at it.
Yeah.
Just from a tax revenue, what is reported to us. It means about $50,000 in additional sales tax in that month. But the greater breadth of it is a lot of people lease out their homes and use that revenue to go away on vacation during Iditarod. So we don't really have a firm number on that, but I would imagine it would be, if there was a tax, which I'm not proposing, it would be substantial. The other issue is that, we don't get every tax dollar that's owed to us because we know that probably there are 2 cash register systems in Nome at times. So, and then you have to look at the value of the branding. What's that value? Because for many people, Nome equates to Iditarod, depending on which group. It's Iditarod, Gold, Wyatt, the Alaska Native folks who have been here since time immemorial, and they all have their special interest groups, and you also put a huge investment into the chamber, which, also helps promote the city. So there's a lot of value, and this is a unique year. It's the 50th anniversary. That's only happens once. And, we're already hearing people are making their plans to come to Nome. So I anticipate it is going to be quite the demand for looking for places to stay and to come up here and visit. And you can use some of your ARPA money for economic stimuli. So just so you know.
Okay, we need to behave now. The general has walked in. How's it going, Howard?
I haven't been a general for a long time.
Okay, are we ready for a couple minutes stand-up break here?
Yep.
Cool.
You want to know about Iditarod, the guy that's walked in?
I know, well,
More than all of us collectively together.
I already heard about Mr. Farley's role in Iditarod, so.
So do we need Nikki anymore, Glenn, or are you gonna excuse her, or?
I thought Nikki liked hanging around.
Oh,
Do we need her, or?
I think we're gonna get through
Okay,
maybe quickly.
okay. Nikki?
Oh, Joy corrected me, it's not general, it's admiral.
Excuse me.
That's another life.
You're being given a get out of jail pass, so you might as well take it and run with it. Okay?
Thanks, Nikki, nice job.
Thank you.
So you can stay if you want, but you're free to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, not only doing what they're going to do already, but maybe there's funds available there that you don't have to get from there. And here's Mr. Chamber President right here. Oops. Hey, Mark.
Zip your pockets up.
Yeah, right. These are the Iditarod folks looking for funding.
Oh,
So I said,
that's your job, isn't it?
told them, not all, no, this year, yeah, if you want to take it
Well,
on
you
your
know,
tax dollar.
seriously, we used to raise most of the money with raffles.
Yeah.
The city never contributed,
I know.
but hardly at all.
Yeah.
But they did give us access
So if I grab a piece of this, you're not.
Places.
Right.
You know,
the halls and stuff like that.
Our secret.
As far as the cash. It was the other way
Have a
around.
seat right next to me.
Because when Iditarod got going in its heyday, the basketball.
It's okay, I just ate dinner. I only had turkey soup.
The flesh, we're back in the flesh.
Good.
That's still important.
Yeah, that's a very important part of it.
Emily, where are you?
Oh, I was sitting over here. Looks like I'm gonna have to consolidate.
Right.
Please, you'd like to take.
Lots of festivities. Yeah. Now they get here. We don't have time to do anything.
He's outside.
Yeah, I have one replaced. Yeah. I know,
I understand you correctly.
It's filled out that last district. I looked at all the bylaws. Wait a minute, it's all Deanna, Chase.
That's it?
That's $1 million.
That's only $1 million.
That's $1 million.
But we also.
I mean, we would take in 5 million in sales tax in here. Yeah.
You know, they just came back and said, you only get from visitation from tourists. The state quoted me a figure of $6,000.
I don't know if I'm
They don't
proud
have
of
any records. I mean, how would they get records? All they get, the only tax that goes to the state related to tourism is the rental car tax.
That was their
But I don't know where he's.
number that they quoted to one of the news media.
I'm just.
And I said, well,
I'm looking for jobs on the East Coast.
no. I said, there's a lot
I'm
of
heading out, so.
Oh, there he is.
number is the number of homes rented. That has to be at least 50 to 100. You know, And that alone means anywhere from $150,000 of economic impact. That's not even, and then you don't, even my wife is coming up, and she doesn't like the winter. She wants to come up here because it's the 50th anniversary, and she wants to do a dog sled ride. I said, who are you? What happened to my wife?
Bummer, but you know.
By Denali Park, probably here in Nome too, where they, the mushers can put wheels on the sleds. Or actually, here, I think they just.
No.
Oh, we need an executive session.
I'm glad you have a good report coming up.
No.
Rely on you.
And it was my hope that I was like, my family is
Thought about it.
Time is
Thought it when I saw it.
7:01, and I think we're ready to go. Call the Gnomecon Council meeting for Monday, April 26th, 2021 to order. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll to establish a quorum?
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Johnson is excused. Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Martinson.
Here.
Councilmember Reeder is excused. Councilmember Topcock.
Here.
Youth Representative Okalisic.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on then to approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Mark Johnson and Councilmember Martinson. Is there any amendments?
I have an amendment.
Please.
Motion to enter into an executive session to discuss contractual matters, the immediate knowledge of which may adversely affect city finances.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Mark Johnson. A roll call, please, on the amendment.
To add an executive session, Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on then to approval of minutes. We have our minutes. Sorry.
Turning to the main motion.
Oh, sorry. Yep, okay. The motion on the agenda as amended. Any further? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, now the approval of minutes. We have the minutes of the April 12th, 2021 regular meeting. Is there a motion to adopt these minutes?
Move to adopt.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Second.
Councilmember Topcock. Any discussion? Any noted changes? If not, a roll call, please, on the adoption.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on then to communications. The first item we have is a letter from the Iditarod, Chaz St. George, to the Nome City Council. And Chaz is here. He's not going to read his letter, but would you like to say anything else?
I appreciate the opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you earlier tonight. I'd like to thank you because I you know, since that short, brief summary of what we would be doing with the city of Nome, I've heard a lot, and I must tell you that your synergy, your positivity is going to carry the day here in Nome on the 20th, for the 50th running of this race. And today we were looking at how we could build into this particular year an entire week that would be dedicated to the city of Nome, leading up to the finish. And so that's another aspect that I'd like to just make sure and make you aware of. If anybody has any questions, you know, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or anybody else, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. George. The next communication is our budget calendar. And as noted in our work session previous, we have another session on the 29th at 5:30, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then. To citizens' comments. Are there members of the public that would like to address the council this evening? Mr. Farley.
I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I'm looking forward to the 50th anniversary of the Iditarod. And boy, I'll tell you, that was a dedication. This town and this part of Alaska put it all out. We raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. A lot of it was raised with raffles, and this town just loved raffles, and they still do. Pull tabs, you name it. Pull tabs, yes. And most important, the Nome Kennel Club, which we set up as the unit to carry this burden and to do the work on this end. And we ran years, folks, without a budget. We ran with almost entirely volunteers. If you knew something, we could use you. We brought the kids in from the high school when they first started doing things on computers. We brought the kids in from high school so they could help out with the returns and the times and so on. It was a big effort by this city. Now I got a little anecdote. I told a couple of our guys at the bars, I won't mention any names, I said, I need some gold to raffle off. So we went up at the Nome AC across the street there, upstairs. And these guys wandered in. Each one of them had a quart bottle full of gold nuggets. And they laid that out on the bed and they said, "Which ones you want, Howard?" So this is how we ran our raffles. And gold is a beautiful raffle ticket, folks. That always goes very good. But getting to the serious part, the Iditarod's history goes clear back to the Serum Run of 1925. The Nome Kennel Club in 1975 ran a reenactment of that Serum Run. All volunteers. The only thing it cost us to run that, and we've got ancestors from the originals. They ran the original race, and I told them, don't beat the time. And anyway, that cost $1,000. This was the days, folks, when we had long-distance phones. $1,000 in a long-distance phone was nothing in those days. But that was our only cost, just to call and get people to volunteer. My wife Julie and I, we flew down the trail every year to our halfway point and met with the people in the villages. And we became very good friends with all of them. And we asked them, how things going this year? Oh, it went great. You ready for next year? Yeah, we're ready for next year. And there was no money that passed hands or anything. And they took very good care of the mushers in the villages. And there's people that have checkers that have been with us for 50 years. Remember, this is the anniversary. And for 50 years, it's got to go. It just has to go. When we ran a reenactment of the Nome Candle Race, which is a famous race that was put on by the Nome Kennel Club back in 1908, we raised in this little town here, the first prize was $100,000. I signed that check and gave it to an Iditarod musher. And you know what he did? He turned right around and donated 10,000 of that for a musher coming up the next year as a donation. So this race was built, folks, on hearts of gold. And we still feel good about it. And to let this 50th anniversary go by it has to go. It has to go. And it's got my backing.
Yeah, all right. I was just remembering as a kid being down in the North Star Hotel there when that was the headquarters with you and Julie down there. Those were some interesting and fun times.
You and I are the only ones that know what the North Star was.
That's all right.
Or that big green building down there, a long, long time ago, back in ancient history.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I'm 100% of course for this because I got one more little anecdote. When I left on the Iditarod, there was a man that kept coming into headquarters. Headquarters was I was the butcher at AC in the green building. Anyway, my wife took over it while I was gone. I was gone for 45 days. So anyway, every day a guy would come in and he'd say, yeah, Howard's not going to make it. Not a chance of him making it. Nah, he's not going to make it. She says, I'll bet you $100. Well, after I did make it, I went down to the bar. I knew where he hung out. And he was down at the end of the bar. And I walked in and I said, there's some guy in here that didn't believe I could finish the Iditarod race. And I pointed my finger at him, and he turned red from he walked up the 100.
That had to be in the Bering Sea.
Yeah, the Bering Sea. And the funny thing about the Bering Sea, in the early days, people would come to me and they say, well, I want to charter an airplane. I said, go to the Bering Sea. He says, you mean they're all drunken pilots? I said, no. I says, that's where they hang out. That's their office. For the good old days.
Thank you, Howard. We much appreciate you coming down and speaking to us. Is there somebody else that would like to address the council? Brent? Ms. Johnson? Oh. Ms. Atlanta?
Hello, Lisa Ilana, thank you. I just want to express my gratitude to Zoe and to Megan for putting forth that resolution recognizing missing murdered Indigenous women, missing murdered Indigenous people. It's falls really in line with the efforts that the council has worked really hard towards since 2018. And I think it's absolutely commendable that this young person put that forward to the council, and I encourage you to approve it. Thank you very much for your hard work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson? Did you wish to speak?
Do I look like I?
Okay, I just didn't want to miss anybody.
No, I'm listening this time.
Okay, Mr. Burmeister.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to thank everybody for the support in the city of Nome, just pretty much over the last 50 years for Iditarod. It's something that I had the honor to grow up, be born and raised here in Nome. It's been a part of my life since childhood. It's something that gave us dreams as children. I mean, Adam, you grew up here. John, you grew up here. Being a part of it, going and watching the mushers finish, hearing that siren go off, it was excitement. Not just as a child, but as a resident of Nome. And it's something that in the last few years, times have changed a little bit, but still brings that excitement to Nome, not just with the mushers coming in, but you've got the basketball tournament. There's all kinds of activities that take place. And for me to be a part of it and it kind of make a lifestyle around it, it's something, looking at guys like Howard Farley and Herb Nugpuck and Jerry Austin, Sonny Linder, Rick Swenson, those were my heroes. Those were my Michael Jordans coming up. The thing that I missed this year about Iditarod was not having those villages to travel through. We were very isolated from the people and the locals, and that's what makes this event special. Not just for the mushers, but for the communities we pass through, for the lifestyle in Alaska. And we were able to pull together and put on an event this year, which was wonderful. The mushers, as well as the communities, missed it. We're all looking forward to being back on the traditional route this coming year and finishing in Nome and bringing that back with a big bang being the 50th anniversary. And I'd just like to thank you all for giving Iditarod the opportunity to make the presentation today and look forward to that. I think there's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of opportunity right now to increase the tourism and bring things back to Nome to a level that's better than it ever was in the last 5 or 10 years and grow it in the future. And I think being able to work out a partnership with Iditarod, continue to grow what's already there is going to certainly help the city of Nome, the businesses here in Nome, and not just Nome, but our communities in the surrounding region as well. And it's pretty special to be a part of the event and to growing up around it, from volunteering in the dog lot to putting in the trails and wearing most of the hats involved in it, just being able to grow up here, and encourage you all to look favorably upon that, and hopefully we can continue to grow it and move forward into the future.
Thank you. Congratulations on this year, and we know where you're going to be next year. So.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that 50th anniversary Nome champion.
That's the goal for next year, absolutely. So that's what we're looking forward to, bringing that victory home to Nome and being able to do it. It's something that would be an amazing experience. So we've been chasing that dream for 25 years and it's getting closer. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there others that would like to address the council this evening? Going once?
I guess
Okay, Ms. Johnson.
I'm Trin. Everybody know who I am. I just want to say, congratulations to my husband, Mark Johnson, for 30 years being a businessman in this, Nome, Alaska. And talking about Iditarods and stuff, we have always been supporting, promoting basketball teams and stuff like that. And that was always really, really great, with bringing all the villages together and recruiting them for basketball games and stuff. And it's always nice to walk into the rec center and being able to see our name, business name up there winning. Right, Mark? So, and also, it's good to see Aaron, and how you probably know my dad, Mark Baker.
Yes.
He, in the past, he did do the volunteer Iditarod run. Well, I watched him make food and everybody, and then he did the trails back in the day. So, but yeah.
Great.
Congratulations, Mark. Keep working.
Thank you.
30 more.
All right, one more time. If not, thank you, and we will move on then to planning and zoning. We have February 2nd and March 2nd minutes in the packet. And that brings us then down to unfinished business. Ordinance 210401.
210401, an ordinance amending chapter 17.15.3030, adoption of Alaska Remote Sellers Sales Tax Code.
Thank you. The council will stand in recess at this time to take public testimony on this ordinance. Are there members of the public that wish to address the council this evening? Seeing no indication, we'll come back into session. And is there a motion to adopt ordinance 210401?
Motion to adopt ordinance number 0210401.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Mark Johnson, Councilmember Brown. Discussion on the ordinance. Yeah, this is second reading. I assume you heard all about it last time around, or had your questions answered. Anything further we need from the clerk? Good. All right, a roll call please on the adoption of the ordinance.
Councilmember Topcott. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item we have is ordinance 210402.
Code 210402, an ordinance amending chapter 2.15 and chapter 1.6 7.15 and Chapter 15.10 to elect city council members, school board members, and utility board members at large.
Thank you. The council stand in recess to take public testimony on this ordinance. Are there members of the public that wish to address this evening? Mr. Henderson.
Good evening. My name is Scott Henderson. I'm a 24-year resident of Nome. I pretty much try to vote in every local election that I can. I'm here to testify tonight against this proposed ordinance, which changes current election laws governing our municipal elections. My comments tonight are my own thoughts, and I'm not representing any organization or affiliation. It seems that there's different opinions on this particular issue. I appreciate the article in Nome because that was on their website because that was the first I had heard of it. Several council members have claimed that the current election laws may discourage candidates from running for public office. Reasons given include that there may be too much unnecessary campaign strategy to think about, or that the process is too adversarial and can create discomfort for candidates due to small-town politics. One councilman even posed the question, are we changing the rules simply for the sake of change? I've voted in Nome for many years, and I have to admit that I don't ever recall a time when there was an unfilled city council seat due to no one being interested in the position. I also don't recall any adversarial or controversial campaigns for municipal office. I actually often wish our elections would be a little bit more competitive so that there would be more spirited debates and voters would have a better idea of where candidates stand on important topics before they vote. I agree that there's a reluctance among many Nome residents interested in running for public office. But I'm not convinced that this is caused by candidates having to run for a specific seat, or that it will be improved by implementing an even more somewhat anonymous process by lumping all candidates together for these multiple seats so candidates don't really have to run against each other. If candidates are intimidated or nervous about running against one or two opponents now, what do you think they're going to feel like with running against four more opponents if this change happens? I've often wondered if the public's reluctance to participate in our municipal elections may be due to a lack of a close connection felt between voters and candidates. And that may be caused by our current at-large voting process, where everybody votes for everybody, or at least all candidates. If voters do not see a good reason to vote, or they feel they won't have a representative who they know personally that they can trust that will speak up for the concerns, they probably don't vote. This proposed change, I believe, is going to make the voting process even more distant than it is now, and I don't believe it will strengthen the connection between voters and candidates. I actually believe it will widen that gap. There are several alternatives to consider that may actually do something to strengthen that bond. I've had several discussions with a few folks about the idea of district voting. I know that's a new concept to Nome, and I don't think it's ever been implemented here. But I think a worthwhile discussion to have is what that would look like. You may think that Nome is too small for a system like that. It very well may be. A district-based system could potentially be established in which council members reside in the neighborhood and the voting district that they represent. It would be kind of like having your own personal ombudsman or spokesperson for Nome citizens to bring your comments to, or your concerns to. And I'm not here tonight to advocate for district voting in Nome, but if we're considering changes to our current election laws to improve overall participations, we probably should also be evaluating other types of options instead of only the one alternative that's being proposed here tonight at second reading. Last November, the state of Alaska changed its election laws. The state legislature did not mandate the change, but left it up to Alaska voters to decide how they want to elect their leaders. I believe the city of Nome should also follow suit and leave it up to its voters to decide whether or not we should change our election laws, and if so, how. These proposed changes are not insignificant and could potentially affect re-election chances for every common council member, every school board member, and every utility board member. From my perspective, this creates a potential conflict of interest for city council members, or at least the appearance of one. Changing election laws should be a very careful, a very thoughtful and deliberative process that should not be rushed. As far as I know, there's no emergency here. If we're going to change how Nome voters elect their representatives, then Nome voters should be the ones to decide what changes those should be. I urge all of you tonight to not pass the proposed ordinance, but instead pass a resolution calling for a special city referendum or election on this issue. In addition, I ask that you also allow for more community input and discussion as to whether or not any other electoral processes may be effective in addressing the lack of candidate participation. Put several options on the ballot and let the voters decide. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Are there others that wish to testify on this ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, or were you going to read Linda Conley's?
I actually did not bring it, but do you?
I can read it. Okay, so this is a communication from Linda Conley. Hi, John. I just read the proposed ordinance changing how city council, utility board, and school board members are to be elected, and find the ordinance to be very confusing. It sounds like every candidate for council, for example, will just be listed on the ballot for all openings on the council. If there are 7 candidates for 2 vacancies, the successful 2 elected people must each receive at least 40% plus 1 vote. This sounds a lot like the ranked voting method recently approved in the state, which I am totally opposed to and voted against. The current election is based on elections citywide at large of candidates for specific seats. The A, B, C, etc. seat designation is not a designation for a specific section of Nome, as you may find in some larger cities like Anchorage, where candidates are elected for certain areas of the municipality. Every elected person in Nome is elected to serve the community as a whole at large. The seat designation is just a way of keeping track of the term of office. What happens if a person is elected and resigns after 19 months? How will the ballot show the candidate running to fulfill the balance of the 3-year term be listed on the ballot when there is no longer a specific seat designation? I know I am no longer living in Nome, but my heart is there, and I do care immensely about the city government. Always will. Thank you for reading my concerns.
Thank you. Okay, if there's not any further testimony on this ordinance, come back into session. The time is 7:27. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 210402?
Move to adopt ordinance number 210402.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Topcock, Councilmember Brown. Open for discussion.
I'd actually like to make a motion to postpone the vote on this ordinance second reading to our next meeting, with the hope that we'll have 6 council members that can vote on it. I think it's important enough of an issue to have all council members present.
There is a motion on the floor to postpone. Time certain. Is there a second? Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Martinson. Roll call, please, on the motion to postpone.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That'll come up at another meeting. The next item we have is ordinance 210403. Is there a motion to read this?
210403, an ordinance amending chapter 7.15 to change the time for filing a declaration of candidacy.
Thank you. You knew what I meant. All right. We'll stand in recess to take public testimony on ordinance 210403. Are there members of the public that would like to address this ordinance this evening? Seeing no indication, the council come back into session. The time is 7:29. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 210403?
Motion to adopt 010403, 210403.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Mark Johnson, Councilmember Topcock. Discussion. Purpose of this is simply to allow a little more time to get balance printed, and really does little less than that. Changes the filing time by 14 days. There's no discussion. A roll call, please, on the adoption of ordinance 210403.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item, new business, is resolution 210406.
R 210406, a resolution proclaiming May 5, 2021 as a day of awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 210406?
I'll move to adopt resolution number R 210406.
Thank you, Councilmember Topcock. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Brown. Any discussion?
Actually, I'd like to offer our youth representative an opportunity to be an honorary second for the resolution if she so desires. It's just something I just made up.
Yeah, no. That's acceptable to the chair. You'll be listed in the records as having seconded the motion. Honorary. All right, if there's no further discussion, a roll call, please, on the adoption of 210406.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And in line with this resolution, and the last party on the list, just a reminder to everybody that spring has sprung. You're able to get out a little bit more in the surroundings, and we're still trying to find out where flow is. So anybody that can assist or has any information that they can provide, the family I know would appreciate it, the city would appreciate it as well.
We just had some comments from students at the high school.
Sure.
It's okay. I know we already passed it,
No,
but I just
go right
really
ahead.
thought it was important to share them. So the first one is from Bethany Cryer. Many of these women are our families and friends. This land is native land and our women should feel safe on it. We shouldn't be afraid to be out alone. We should feel safe. Women shouldn't be blamed for what happens. I feel like this resolution is a step in the right direction to create safe spaces.
We all know a woman who has been assaulted in one way or another, whether it be known or not. As a tight-knit community, we know their families, we see the hurt and pain of the loss of their loved ones. The racial profiling myself and other females have experienced from others not in our culture is sickening. We can't start healing from this historical trauma until we acknowledge this happening in our own communities. This resolution will bring these families the closure that they need to begin healing.
This one is from Dawson Schaefer. This day is something that really needs to be recognized, especially with the history of women being assaulted in Rome. It's been normalized throughout our society, and it shouldn't be. It brings awareness to a problem that often goes unnoticed.
I support this resolution because it happens everywhere in the United States. I think it's important to recognize it because it's a topic that doesn't get enough recognition. It's a hard topic, but it's something that needs to be addressed.
And then finally, we have, I support this resolution because this is a problem we have been facing for a really long time. You'd think we have already solved this problem by making this more aware, but the Indigenous women get pushed off because they are Indigenous. So making this a day where we recognize these families and friends who are still grieving their lost loved ones, things should not be normalized.
Just talking about, this is just for me too. I talked to my fellow classmates and my peers about the resolution. And just talking about the resolution, it started really important conversations within the student body. We started talking about why missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is important to us. And we paid respect to those family members that have lost their mothers, sisters, aunties, friends, etc. As an Indigenous woman, this resolution is extremely important to me. It is bringing recognition to an issue that is prevalent to today and an issue that often goes unnoticed. I shouldn't have to be scared to go outside alone. I shouldn't have to be worried about why it's taking my sister an extra couple minutes to get home. With this resolution, I feel like we can start taking important steps to making our community members feel more safe.
Thank you. Appreciate you bringing forward those comments. Moving on then, Ken made it back.
Good evening, Ken Morton on behalf of Nome Joint Utility System. Looking at the amount of folks expressing interest in water and sewer and power connections this summer, looks like there's going to be a pretty busy season. It's great coordination. On the power generation side, we have a updated draft layout of our plan to shift fuel tank farm operations down to the West Nome tank farm pad. Presented that informally at a work session last week to the Port Commission, and tomorrow the Utility Board will be looking at it as well. Goal is to get consensus on the concepts and then start moving towards formal design. Also related to the tank farm, we're going to have a busy season this year, cleaning tanks, inspecting tanks, which is something we're going to be doing forever, whether or not we relocate the tank farm or not. It's just part of owning and operating a tank farm. On the water sewer side, maybe springtime, but this is also the time of year where the frost is about, as deep as it's going to go. And we've had quite a few freeze-ups that we've been working on. More sewer systems actually than water systems of late, which is not the common. On Bering Street, we had a pre-construction meeting earlier this month. Contractor is slated to start right here by Nome, start heading north, and that will be right around the 1st of June. They have equipment coming in on the first barge also, but between Bering Street going and then Knick also has an airport project, it should be a pretty busy summer. Related to Bering Street, mentioned a little bit ago that the state's going to have a Sepulveda Road project in a couple of years. We're expecting that we're going to be replacing our water system on that, similar to what we're doing on Bering. We reached out to DEC and asked if they would agree to amend our loan documents for Bering Street to also include Sepulveda, because it was very like type work. And they have given us the nod on that initially, and that's up for public comment. So I'm sure we'll be back for formal permission with you all, but that's how we're looking to fund that work at this point. Any questions for things utility? Sir?
On the Barron Street project, I know it's not, you're taking care of utilities and not the road project itself, but do you anticipate what the traffic pattern's gonna be or how they're going to handle that?
So they're looking to do it in sections. The first one's going to be from Nome to 2nd. And while that's happening, I believe the road will be essentially closed to through traffic in that area. Then they're going to get that back up to grade. It'll be 2nd to probably Sepulveda, and proceed northward in that fashion. It should go pretty quick, actually. I would expect them to be mostly done with the significant work that involves transportation by late July. Curb and gutter, sidewalk, that'll take longer, but that won't impact traffic as much.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate it, Ken. Mr. Stickman, have you written a report?
First of all, I would like to take a moment to recognize Emily. This, I understand, will be your last council meeting.
It is, yes.
So I want to thank her for the coverage. And we've worked closely with KNOM, especially over the past year with the pandemic. So I want to wish her, and I'm sure you all do too, all the luck in the world with her new career or extension of the career wherever she is taking herself. Okay. just so everybody knows, we will be doing IT upgrades in City Hall tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. We will have vaccinations here again Friday night, and we are going to look at whether we're going to continue with that. The hospital now has vaccinations when you land. You can sign up at Ted Stevens, and they'll have the vaccinations for you at the Nome testing tent. Plus, they have now expanded it to the post office, and they had 7 people the other day vaccinated there. That'll be twice a week. I'm not exactly sure the days. I think it might be Tuesday and Thursday, but don't count on that. We also, the mayor and I, hosted a meeting of Alaska Native organizations. We are going to have another meeting in June to address the issue of mental health, alcoholism, homelessness, and sexual abuse. So we had probably 30 people here the other day. And other than that, it's pretty much in my report.
Thank you. Any questions of the city manager?
And you have in front of you Joy's report, and I don't know if Joy wants to go into detail on this, but she did submit her report, and it's in front of you.
Great. Joy, did you have anything you wanted to highlight?
Mr. Mayor, no, not at this time, I don't believe, unless anyone has any questions.
Great, and I guess I understand people are moving back to the court, and the court's getting ready to open.
Yes, it does. Things are starting to crank up and get busy. The phones are ringing off the hook and people are stopping by. I think they smell summer.
We can't wait.
No, amen.
All right, thank you, Joy. Appreciate your time. Moving on then to citizens' comments, second session. Would anybody like to speak to the council at this point? Seeing no indication, we will come back in then to council member comments.
Councilmember Brown.
No comment.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
I'd like to make a request that we bring forth an ordinance to have a sales tax holiday at the earliest point that we can have it, which I understand maybe July 1st. For us to consider having a sales tax holiday or moving the summer sales tax from 7% back down to 5%.
For the duration of the...
For the duration of, well, we can't, I'd like to do it forever, but I don't think we can do that. Let's take it back to the voters to do that.
I'm not sure on that one.
But at least it would be 5% all of this year except for 1 month.
2 months, May and June.
Yeah, well,
If it was up to me, we'd do a motion today and we would
Right.
have it start next in a few days. But
Yep.
my understanding is that that's not up to us anymore because
Yep.
we now belong to
Yep.
the remote sellers thing. And the soonest that they can do it is July 1st. City clerk.
Councilmember Martin.
I have no comment.
Councilmember Topcott.
Yeah, and we didn't get the flyer ready in time for the packet deadline, but there's a listening session on missing and murdered Indigenous people this Friday, April 30th from 1 to 5. It's a tribal consultation space for tribal citizens as well to express their concerns related to MMLP. I need to double check with you, Glenn, that we can use Old St. Joe's on Friday.
Yes.
Okay, so if you'd like to be in person, Old St. Joe's on Friday. Otherwise, we have a Zoom link. You can go to the board's website under the events tab.
Super.
Representative Oklasik.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to mayor's comment, just a couple of little things as noted in the city manager's report. We held a meeting here for a couple of hours last week or so with folks in the community that have a part in the health and welfare of our community and our homeless. And I think that it was a good session. And rather than just meet and go off and not do anything, we'll be meeting again to see how we can actually put something into action. Additionally, Chief Heinzelman had a little training program going on with a institute elsewhere down in the south that it's some police folks that no longer are in enforcement, but are trying to deal with the results of homelessness and drug abuse and the like. And I think that was some good information also, and we might be able to tap them to assist us in this overall endeavor. The Lieutenant Governor is coming to town on Friday. I don't know that that's a secret. Maybe it was, it isn't anymore. To talk about tourism. And so we'll be glad to welcome Lieutenant Governor Meyer to Nome. It's been a long time since we've had politicians coming through here. And so it's maybe another sign that we're getting back to something a little bit more normal. Also, 2 people filled out their paperwork finally for the Public Safety Commission. Bryant will send that off to the background check this week, and we'll be putting forward some appointments at the next meeting. That then brings us to executive session, and is there a motion to recess into executive session on financial matters?
Second.
Councilmember Martinson, Councilmember Johnson, a roll call, please.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Is this something that we're going to have action after the meeting, or?
No.
Okay. Okay, there will be no action following the executive session. We'll come back into session and go to adjournment. So, thank you all for being here this evening. Really appreciate your participation, and we will look forward to more of the same.
So where are you going?
Okay.
You know, if you can't tell me, that's fine. Oh, by the way, I meant to tell you that I forgot the 2 pictures that we got today.
Those are awesome. I didn't realize they were metal until this one here for myself.
Yeah, they've gone to a metal version. So.
No, it's not.